Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, a fifth straight L, more Jimmy news, and Bradley Beal, maybe he really was just playing nice. Next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Wednesday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. Joining me, as always, from the Wild West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling on this Wednesday? Ben Garcia.
Personally, I'm well.
Good.
I am okay. That's good. You know, some people, and you kind of pointed it out before we got on, you're like, what are you drinking? Well, some people, when there's bad nights or whatever, they take the edge off a little bit. Maybe they'll have, some sort of adult beverage. See, me, I'm not much of a drinker. This chocolate milk over here, hitting the spot, healing all the wounds, but it is most embarrassing loss of the season? Question mark. Not the worst loss. We're so past
what's even
that
the list anymore.
Yeah, what's the superlative we add to this one? I think embarrassing fits it. I mean, the Hornets are terrible, but whatever.
But the Pelicans were terrible. The Magic without their two best players were terrible.
The Pelicans were bad. The Pelicans were really bad. Add it to the list.
Charlotte's a weird one too, because I'm always have been a Hornets guy, even though their record never indicates it. I'm always like, but they have talent, and I guess maybe the Suns got to prove my point right. So egg on my face.
Espo tweeted out earlier from PHNX. He tweeted out, if the Hornets get the win, can they at least send us Nick Richards? And I thought that was funny.
Yeah, you want to just do 10 minutes breaking down Nick Richards' fit on the Suns? Because, I mean, that's probably better than this game at this point. He showed off.
He was, I deserve Nick Richards, because that's the first time I've watched Nick Richards maybe once or twice all year. I got to be fair. Now, listen, he was going up against the worst rotation of big men, but he took advantage of that situation. But hey, listen, I was the one saying Nick Richards isn't your savior, and he's not. But man, you know what? That guy just looks like a basketball player, while the other guys that we have at times look like they should be playing something else.
So Devin Booker did go off in this game and got back steady. I guess we can't say that for sure. It's just one game, but 39 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds, 14 of 25 from the field, was aggressive from the jump, got to the line 9 times, and, did his thing. But that second quarter, the Suns are outscored by 20, and they go down double digits heading into halftime, and that was kind of all she really wrote. They maybe had one last little chance in the fourth quarter, but I believe it was 13-6 run to open the fourth for Charlotte, and Bud calls a timeout, I believe, at that moment, and that was the game. 42% shooting from the field, and a lot of the same bad things we've seen all season long, Ben.
I just want to say, just going off of your second quarter, they had a 40-33 lead entering the half, and then were outscored 26-6, and then ended up trailing 59-46 into the first half. That's how bad it was. They just, you want to talk about, I mean, it was literally a mix of everything. They couldn't hit a shot. Transition defense was horrendous. Rotations were bad defensively. I mean, rinse and repeat the podcast from 3 nights ago when we lost. We're talking about the same issues that I don't even know if it's a want to. Maybe they just suck. Maybe they're just terrible.
Here's the part of it that, so obviously we'll talk about Beal plenty. We're going to get to the latest on Jimmy Butler, the latest on the Beal side of it, the latest on the trade mechanics. We've gotten a lot of news on that stuff throughout the day, but there was a basketball game tonight. That is what this is all about, so we don't want to ignore it. And when we're looking at Beal, 5 of 13 from the field, He did have 5 assists, but that kind of exemplifies the thing that I'm scratching my head about with this team right now, Ben, which is they took 33 threes, still probably not enough, but they cleared 30. That's kind of been the number that they've been shooting for. In a lot of these games, they've had more assists than you would think. I believe the past 3 games, it was 30, then 33, then 27. Like, that's pretty good. And, it's more than Charlotte had, for instance. And yet, they only shoot 42%. They still can't get to the line for anything. And it just feels so, outside of Booker and Durant scoring, it just feels so like unstructured right now. But yet, like, you would never tell that from the box score. Do you know what I mean? It's so weird to keep up with and keep track of night to night, because it's almost hard to like circle the thing that's going wrong outside of like they're just not playing well on that end of the court right now.
Yeah, you're kind of alluding to something I talked about, I don't know, a week ago when Kevin Durant stands were after my head. When I had said Kevin Durant is shooting the ball well, and it's been pretty efficient, but man, why does every game feel kind of empty? And this kind of applies to the Phoenix Suns as a whole. Booker was pretty good tonight. Kevin Durant was okay at 26 points. He was 8 for 18. He wasn't amazing by any means. Had an air ball, I think, in the third quarter of that game from 3 where the Suns really could have used it. Everything feels empty. Guys get their whatever. Statistically, the assists are there. Devin Booker, I think they said today, it's his 4th straight game with 9+ assists or something insane. Like, the statistics are there. They're just getting run out of games, and a lot of that has to do with defense. Offensively, they're a top 10 team. Like, statistically, offensively, they're a top 10 team. Defensively,
not
they're
lately,
horrendous.
But they are, yeah.
Well, I just mean
here's
as
the
a
thing.
whole.
Yeah, no, you're right. I just am saying, like, I think the recent is where it has started to feel especially, and I like that word, empty. I don't know. Maybe it's not actually that complicated, and I guess if I were to try to kind of sum it up, and this game did show it, even though, like you mentioned, and I said in the, overview of this thing, 39-10 from Book is not a bad game by any means, but I think that the reality right now just is that if you're going to be a bad defense, which they are, it was a lower possession game, but their transition defense was awful. They allowed a lot of second possessions, and they gave up a 115 offensive rating, which would still be pretty darn good, even if it's not, elite. 115 points, not anything crazy, but that's bad if you're a defense. If you're going to be like that, bottom 5 defense, and you don't have, like Trae Young, James Harden, even LeBron on some of those Cavs teams that would just sort of, sleepwalk through the regular season, those individual talents are good enough to make a good offense, even if their team is not awesome and the defense sucks. But that is very few and far between, and the Suns do not have one of those guys. And so maybe really all it comes down to is that we're maybe overthinking the offensive side of it, and it's just that they're not getting any stops. So when you're not getting any transition offense, you're not able to, be unpredictable to the defense and change up the pace of the game and be unpredictable and random the way that Bud wants you to. There's just a cap on how good your offense is going to be if your defense is bad. Like, every coach always sits there and tells us the 2 ends of the floor are more connected than we always want to think of them as. And I honestly just think maybe the focus on the offense, even on an ugly night like this, is beside the point, and maybe this really is just all about the defense at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think something that kind of goes into this in all sports is good defense leads to good offense, correct? But when you're such a bad defense like the Suns and you're a top 10 offense, you're never getting out in transition because you're always taking the ball out of the basket. You're not forcing turnovers. You're not getting cheap buckets. It's just like in baseball. You get a home run guy that hits a cheap home run, helps cut a lead. And the NFL, it's Tyreek Hill throwing a cheap touchdown and getting a free 6 points. In the NBA, you got to be able to force some turnovers, get out in transition, get an open layup. dunk the ball. And when your guy is struggling and they just see the
Get
ball
to the
go
free
through
throw
the basket,
line, right? Like for
to the
this
free throw
team,
line.
the only way they're ever going to draw fouls is in the open court because they're sure as heck not driving to the basket in a crowded paint.
Mm-mm. And part of that is because their center rotation is so bad. It's so crowded down low that Mason Plumlee, I mean, you want to talk about a bad fit? I mean, at least Nurkic can when I say can literally shoot threes, I mean, he can literally at least throw it from the 3-point line and throw it to the basket. Plumlee doesn't do that. And
Plumlee can barely shoot free throws. With all due respect, hats off, great career. He can't shoot free throws even. So
it also just goes to, you might have to just insert Nurkic back in the lineup because now the lane is getting clogged. I don't even know, man. I don't even know. Like, I like Oso as well, but Oso can't shoot threes, but at least he has the ability to kind of cut back door. He's kind of playing more small ball. He's kind of shooting the floaters from almost the free throw line extended. Mason Plumlee, man, I wouldn't even be upset if they just outright cut this guy. He doesn't fit here.
In it, I mean, yeah, I hear you.
He's a worse fit than Nurkic.
You have to play two centers, and so to me, like, I still look at Nurkic as being the worst issue because even in a game where he made his threes, filled up the box score, he still had 5 fouls, 2 turnovers, and was a minus 22 in his minutes. So, like, I just think you play Plumlee and Oso, but whatever. To me, this kind of does signal, like, you almost would like to see them be able to make a center move before the Jimmy move. But that kind of gets us to the main point of, I think, what we really need to focus on today's episode, which is after we recapped Suns Sixers, Bradley Beal was actively speaking as we were recording, laying it all out there, veiled threats and insinuations about the state of affairs that he's facing with his no-trade clause and the rumors around Jimmy Butler. Then at the same time, you have Jimmy actively working to get his way to Phoenix and Phoenix only. So, can this work? And should the Suns even still be in on it? Next. First, today's show brought to you by the Ultimate Basketball GM. That's right. A brand new mobile game that we all love here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach from the Ultimate GM family. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, all the old guys are quitting. Maybe you can be the next great one. Control every detail of your program, from recruiting players, hiring staff, overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you draw up the plays, you set your strategy. They won't just affect the current season, but you shape the future of your program. It's a game on your mobile device that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. A special offer for Locked On NBA listeners right now. Download the app. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCBB, LOCKEDONCBB, all inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. The perfect way to kickstart your coaching career with Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach. Just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up on your favorite app store. That is Ultimate Basketball Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling here. So, first of all, sign up for the Locked On Suns Daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com, type your email address in, get caught up with the show, NBA analysis, Suns analysis, fantasy advice, and more, all in one place. It's free, and you support us. Very big help. Ben's going to be playing Ultimate Basketball Head Coach, but not before he does the newsletter this week. So
I've already got it downloaded.
There you go. You're going to be the next Tony Bennett because he said, screw it, I'm done with this. But Ben's got the Virginia program on to bigger and better. All right. So let's go back to last night, Ben, because Beal was asked post-game. You were moved to the bench. What were your thoughts there? Was this performance supposed to be telling us something? And how are you handling the noise? Let's hear what he said specifically about that move to the bench.
Were you surprised at all that you would be moved to add a starting lineup?
100%.
I didn't like any indication before this might be something.
Right.
What's your mindset? You know, when they tell you you've been a starter pretty much since you was a shorty. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's your mindset now? It's like, now you're coming off the bench. Like, what you thinking about?
I mean, it's kind of twofold, man. Like, cause yeah, I'm starting the league. Like, I firmly believe that. Like, I don't believe, like, no disrespect to anybody, but I'm a starter.
You're supposed to.
And that's what I firmly believe. But coach made his decision. I'm not going to sit here and argue with him. I'm not going to sit here and be a distraction.
Okay, so question here for you, Ben, is how do you square the two sides of the story as we kind of start with the Beal side of this and the Suns side of this, which obviously gets us to Jimmy? Because Bud said he benched Beal because they needed a change, and then he had a one-on-one conversation with Bradley Beal. And now Beal is saying he was caught off guard, had no advance notice, and was pretty surprised. What's the truth of all of this, do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned something really interesting in our text message last night, which was like, what's advance notice? So is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? Like I believe he thinks is he never thought this option was on the table. It was never brought up in team meetings, and spur of the moment, all of a sudden he brought him into his office and he said, this is what we're doing. I don't know why he was caught off guard by it, given the fact that this team was on a multiple game.
Because he doesn't listen to you.
Point.
He doesn't check out your content.
Right? I mean, listen, he might just have me blocked at this point to keep away the Bradley Beal headed to the bench takes. But I think Brad just got his feelings hurt a little bit. I think since he's been asked to be such a good soldier, and to his credit, he has been, people are turning on him and they're blaming, he feels like, I would think so, they're blaming everything on him or Nurkic, and it's nothing on KD, and it's nothing on Devin Booker. Like, the pieces of it is further notice to me just means it was a spur of the moment thing. I can't believe he was surprised, though. What did you get from that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if he's a prideful guy and he hasn't been off the bench in 9 years, I could understand being kind of hurt by it. But yeah, the advance notice side of it, maybe that's just what he's saying to kind of illustrate how disrespected he felt, and he's just sort of picking something to latch it to kind of not have to say the quiet part out loud of just sitting there and going, yeah, I was pissed. Because that's even another step further. But it's like, dude, well, this is how you responded. So if Bud is supposed to sit there and tease it to you 2 weeks ago, hey, if you keep playing poorly, if we keep losing, your head's on the line. You know, like what that's not how you lead. So of course that's not what you're going to do until you got to pull that trigger. And so that's just sort of how things go. You don't get an advance notice that you might get fired. You don't get advance notice you might get a pay cut at your job. So why are you going to get an advance notice that your role's going to get cut into? But at the same time, we also the next morning, Tuesday morning, had Brian Windhorst going on First Take and saying what you and I sort of beat around the bush with, of what I kind of called a conspiracy theory of, was this to illustrate to Brad in not so uncertain terms, hey buddy, we don't want you. So if you're going to stay in Phoenix and not, cut away your no trade clause, then this is what life's going to be like for you. Smaller role, bench, less respect, whatever. And Windhorst said that's exactly what it was. So I'm kind of in the camp, Ben, of that's the reality of what is going on here. Brad read that situation correctly, and he feels some type of way about it. So he responded to the idea that this was a message to him more than a tactical change, and he did not like that so much.
I was going to say, I'm sure you're a bit aware of kind of like all the other stuff, moving parts around the league, Jimmy and all that.
Yeah.
There's some speculation around the league that this is related to that. Have you thought about kind of like moving on, starting like related to the bigger picture?
If so, I need to be addressed because I hold the cards. So until I'm addressed and somebody says something differently, then I'm going to be a son.
Okay, Ben, so have they not talked to him about the trade yet? They haven't even asked him about his no trade clause?
I don't think they have. You're not saying that have they told him that his name has been danced around in rumors? If they haven't, that is malpractice by the Phoenix Suns front office. You don't do that with your star player. But judging by his language, man, he looks like a guy that is so pissed off and potentially is reading the tea leaves that they're almost trying to force him to accept a trade, which again leads me to kind of believe a trade for Jimmy is closer than we think. But his body language said a lot. I was really impressed last night with Beal and pretty impressed with the team as a whole going on the road and beating a team that has Maxey and George by 10. After that, when you sent me those clips, it all went down. I immediately texted you. I was like, oh my goodness. I think this is just a one-off now. I think he's just pissed. It's going to get worse. It could potentially get as worse as the Jimmy situation in Miami. That's how I think how toxic it's getting in Phoenix, which is why we're getting to in just a second here what the Suns should do about it. But I mean, I'm curious what you thought, man. Didn't he just look? It felt like it was a direct shot at Budenholzer and not James Jones, Ishbia, the whoever's in charge.
Well, if you got to remember when the Jimmy stuff first came out like a month ago now, or I don't even remember. Was that a month ago? This is the second time Beal has said something like this because he was asked about it immediately. And he said, until they tell me something, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Almost the same exact answer. So that's why I look at this and say, are they really just keeping him in the dark and expecting that he's not going to turn on ESPN or open freaking Instagram? Like, it's an open secret. It's all anybody can talk about. NBA fans are a bunch of freaking gossip, queens. It's like all we want to sit there and think about and talk about. So of course it made it to the dude who's involved in the rumors. Like, what are we doing here? So
the NBA is one big novella, man. One big novella. Like,
and he's the main character for this season.
It is. It's hard for me to believe that someone with that's a Sarver thing. Like, you're just not telling your player. It really is. Someone's lying. Either the Suns aren't talking to Beal, or Beal.
Well, they never have
really
said that they did. So I don't know if that's lying. It would just be malpractice, like you said.
That's crazy if you haven't done that. If you're doing that with
Nurkic
Nurkic or Al, you could do that with anyone outside of the big three, big 1+1+1, and Tyus Jones, because Jones signed here to chase a ring. But if that's the case, really bad management by the Suns. Really bad man. You can't do that. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that deters players from coming here. Star players, that being. So, someone's lying.
Well, it doesn't appear to be deterring the exact star player the Suns are pursuing right now.
Freaking crazy.
Who is still suspended from his team down in South Beach and is leaking as much as he possibly can and trying to direct himself to Phoenix, as we all expected. But just because he's doing that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. So, the latest on Jimmy, the latest on if it will happen, and honestly, the latest on if it should happen next. First, today's show brought to you by the Gametime app. We all love checking out events, especially this time of year in Phoenix where it is actually nice to go outside. We actually like to go out at night, go out and do things with friends and family because it's not a million degrees, whether that is sports, concerts, theater, or comedy. Gametime has made it easier to get tickets to your favorite events, and now they have Gametime Picks, their new feature that filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. We have the She Believes Cup out at State Farm Stadium. We have spring training in like a month and a half. It always sneaks up on me. Get your early deals there. Of course, concerts and all sorts of stuff coming constantly in our great big city. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Gametime Picks shows you the best deals at the top. So create an account. Check it out. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA when you make your first purchase for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, Ben, let's close it out. So I want to make sure I'm getting all of this straight. I mentioned the Windhorst report about Beal, but in that same segment on First Take, he also discussed that everything is pointing toward this being about money for Jimmy Butler, right? We talked a little bit about the Warriors last week and how their athletic beat reporter laid out why, from a financial standpoint and a depth standpoint, they weren't really in on this thing right now. Windhorst specifically said that the Suns are the one team who will pay him, but of course it's the team that is also the most difficult to go out and get him for all the reasons all Suns fans know. We can talk about those right now too. And then you had Chris Haynes report, who seems to be very plugged into all things Suns all of a sudden with the benching news and now this, saying that that Butler's camp is leaking to teams, including the Grizzlies, and I think Kevin O'Connor added the Bucks, that, hey, I'm not signing there. You could pay me. I don't even think the Bucks can get him, which is kind of what's funny. I literally don't think that there is a legal trade for him. That I've seen some Bucks fans point that out. I don't even think that they can get him. But don't trade for me because I'm not signing there, whatever, which is exactly what star players do in this position if they want to go to one place, and that one place is Phoenix. What did you make of all of this? Because it is what you've been predicting, and what I think we were all kind of waiting for is making it ugly and making it Phoenix or bust.
I can believe that Jimmy Butler is making it this ugly. He's kind of got the personality for that. Like maybe not selfish, but wants to force a team's hand. I am really surprised it is a Miami Heat player. I'm like maybe even a Spurs player. One of those franchises or organizations that is really well run over the past 3 decades. So that really surprised me that they're in this mix. Man, all signs are pointing to he's going to be a Phoenix Sun. And we can get into in just a second as well, should they still be there, but they are actively leaking. They're actively telling teams. They are tying the Miami Heat's hands, very similar to the Bradley Beal situation where the Wizards couldn't get anything for Beal. They just had to give him up because he was like, I'll go to Phoenix. That's it, though. And if you're Memphis, you're not giving up anything of value, literally anything. Maybe a first-round pick and I don't know, something to make salaries match that don't matter. But you're not, and you're putting protections on that pick too. Because if you know you're losing him at the end of the year, it's a rental. Same with whatever team it is. Milwaukee, let's just say there's something. Milwaukee is not putting stuff on the table, jeopardizing their time with Giannis Antetokounmpo in the future just to bring in Butler. Like, at the end of the day, it is either you are staying in Miami and they are willing to deal with all the bad press and things that you have said as well, or he's going to Phoenix and they're going to swallow their pride. I have a hard time believing Miami's going to swallow their pride. I think I go back and forth. I really think it's 50-50 now. You could flip a coin and he's going one of those two places, or he's staying or going. What did you read from it?
So let's go through the options, right? The Bucks, just to affirm, I looked it up while you were talking. They're in the second apron as well. They don't have a player who makes the same or more. Well, Giannis, Middleton,
Lillard,
Dame, and Brook.
Oh, Middleton.
So they don't have anybody who makes the same or more than Jimmy, and they can't aggregate salaries to get up to that number. They're all in the same rules that the Suns are, so they don't have a Beal. They can't do the trade. So that's out. Memphis, we just talked about. Houston doesn't appear to want to, throw their young core into disarray, and the salaries are a little tough because they don't have anybody they're paying a lot of money to outside of Van Vliet, so that doesn't seem to be in the cards. Warriors, we talked about. The Mavs, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Their season's kind of up in the air right now with both their big stars injured. The Suns, we'll talk about, obviously, and that's kind of it as far as the teams that have really popped up here. So I tend to agree. It's looking like Miami keeps him, and Locked On Heat can talk about what that might look like, or he gets what he wants and he comes to the Suns. Now, you said, do they stomach their pride or whatever? I think you could look at that question multiple different ways. I don't think that they swallow their pride to take Beal. I don't think that the Miami Heat are taking Bradley Beal. I know I've been, doing some relaying of text messages with Wes Goldberg from Locked On Heat throughout this whole process. I did some more today. I said, out of the blue, I just texted him, what are the % chances that the Heat take Beal? Do you want to know what he said? Guess what he said?
0.
He said 0. So, not that he's Pat Riley, but I think that that is very real. And so I put this out on social media today. Where we are right now to me, Ben, is if the Suns had found a third team already, Jimmy Butler would be a Phoenix Sun. The minute they can, he will be a Phoenix Sun. If they can't, he won't be a Phoenix Sun.
Do you
Well, I
think they'll
kind of want
find
to do
someone?
that tomorrow. I kind of want to go through the possible third teams tomorrow because I think that's a good exercise. We've been talking about all the other Jimmy candidates. It seems like there's not any more of those, but now we got to figure out what team would actually take Bradley Beal back. But I think, like, what do you think about him waiving his no trade clause to go somewhere other than the sexy, glamorous places? Like, would he go to Detroit? Would he go to
He's not going to
whatever?
Detroit. Like, it has to be.
But you would
I don't
rather
know.
deal with this?
Exactly.
He's miserable right
yeah,
now.
but I know, man. But, and you know this, but this is more than just basketball at this point. The guy has a family. His kids are here. Phoenix is still a great place to be. It's better than being in Detroit right now, especially where it's freezing cold. Like, these are, and if you're Beal, you're like, hey, I'm not winning a championship with Detroit this year. I'm likely not making maybe you make the playoffs in Detroit. You're probably not making the playoffs with the Phoenix Suns this year, potentially, if this stands pat. I mean, what really are you changing? You got to deal with the bad work environment, but
He's
at least
probably
I'm in
more likely
Phoenix.
to make the playoffs with the Pistons.
Yeah. At this point, I
right
mean, yeah,
now.
yeah, especially maybe the Jaden Ivey thing is such a big deal that they're willing to take him. But you just said doing the exercise. I don't know who's going to take him. If the Heat don't take him, I don't know who is. And if that's the case, like, let me just ask you this before we have to jump off: should the Suns still be in on Jimmy Butler? Oh, I just read exactly what's on the Today Show list. Oh, that's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, there was something you just said about Beal that I wanted to respond to, but now I guess, yeah, I got distracted by looking at
I don't
the
know where
NBA
there's I was
standings
just saying that
because
I don't
the
know where
Pistons
there's
are the 7th seed. And I was like, hey, that's not too bad. Yeah, look, should the Suns still be in on Butler? I think they have no choice. The 2031 pick is going to be fascinating to see what the reporting starts to be around that. Or maybe we don't even ever hear reporting and it just ends up being part of the trade and we find it out. Can they get it protected? Can they do something? That would obviously affect a lot of the value of the trade. But I come back to, not just because I'm stubborn, but because it's truly what I still think, what I said at the very beginning of this whole entire thing. When the very glimmer of this started to come out, Ben, I told you, the main reason I would explore it if I'm the Suns is because the idea of getting off of Brad is that enticing to me. And that is still true. Even if you pay Jimmy Butler, he's just a better fit. Yeah, he's aging pretty poorly, it looks like. It's getting kind of scary with the fall off. That's a whole can of worms. He's just as injury prone as Brad, but he just fits better. So if you're telling me that I'm stuck with somebody who's going to have all those concerns, but they just play a better position and mentality-wise and physicality-wise and emotionally, just seems to be more of a balance for what this team needs, and I cannot have Bradley Beal, who's not a good fit, I might just do it for that reason, even if I'm not sure it's going to turn everything around. And I promise I'm not sure of that. But that's kind of where I'm at, is you kind of just have to do it because of the kind of two birds with one stone aspect of it.
100%. I'm still with you. One, because if the Suns get Jimmy, which is why I still believe in the Suns season as a whole, like, it's still worth watching until we know what happens with Jimmy. If nothing happens with Jimmy, this team isn't going anywhere. If they get Jimmy, I still think there's a chance that seriously they could compete, and the playoffs are weird. Players get injured. Who knows what happens? But I'm with you for the same reason. Move off of Beal. And not only that, but Jimmy's contract with the extension that you'll give him is only 2 more years after that. It's an expiring contract after 1 year. You could move that around for God knows what, but I'm with you. Still got to be in on Jimmy. And it's not even, it is more so about the fiscal responsibility for the Phoenix Suns and getting off of these issues than it is about winning a championship, which is sucks. Just sucks.
The other thing is, the longer that time ticks by and they sit on their hands, they keep losing games. We thought this part of the schedule, they like the whole thing with Gambo and everybody coming out and Gerald saying like, oh, they want to wait and see. Well, they waited and saw. They suck right now.
Have they seen enough? Like,
how could you not? I mean, I truly believe if they had already found a third team, the deal would have happened at this point. I mean, the Heat said they're exploring trades, right? Jimmy got banished. Beal got banished to the bench. The Suns are in free fall. The Heat are, trying to get their season together. So I think everything that everyone needed to see has happened. It's just a matter of, can they find the deal at this point?
The trade deadline, it looks like, is February 6th, if I'm not mistaken. God, man, it's a lot of games to go. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 plus, 15 plus. You can't wait until the deadline. You got to know what you're doing. Got to know what you're doing.
The season could legit be over by then. If this type of play continues, we talked about 20% chance at the play-in, 5% chance of the playoffs right now. And
if you were to tell me right now,
it's just a calculator, but still, like, that's how dire it is. They gotta save this, so they can't wait.
Right now, if like they stand pat, do they make the play-in? Because I'll say no.
So they're 12th right now.
Yeah, they're 12th.
I say no, just because all the teams ahead of them, I just feel better about from a stability standpoint, if nothing else, right? Like,
I agree.
The Clippers just got Kawhi back. The Wolves and Warriors, they're the Wolves and Warriors. They were top teams last year. The Spurs have Wembanyama. They're young. They're healthy. Like, how do you poke a hole in any of those teams ahead of them?
All those teams would beat the Suns right now. All of them.
The Hornets beat the Suns right now. So, yeah, that's where we're at. They gotta press this into fast forward mode. Unprotect the 2031 pick. Do whatever needs to be done. Maybe there is no deal to be done, but honestly,
I was just gonna say, if you haven't already found a deal, are you gonna find one?
Well, that's what we can talk about tomorrow, I think. Trying to find that third team. I think exploring the idea of, like, kind of what I said with the Nick Richards and center trade side of things, of like, should they be holding everything up for Jimmy at this point? Like, I think that's a question. So we'll get into all of that. Hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. Become an everydayer. We got 2 more shows for you to close out the week. One about all of this. There will be one more game. Who knows? The trade could come down at any moment, guys. So keep it right here. Enjoy your Wednesday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.